Welcome to the commission meeting of August 22nd, 2023. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Manager McGill. You have some announcements for us?
We start with a roll call,
Oh,
Mr. President.
Okay.
Commissioner Flynn.
Present.
Commissioner Grella.
Here.
Commissioner Ranny.
Here.
Commissioner Swager Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Silverman.
Here. Okay, now we'll move on to discussion session, summary, and manager's announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier tonight, the commission met in discussion session and received information and discussed the following items. We discussed funding for the contractual increases in the solid waste and recycling contract. We heard an overview of the bid process related to municipal projects. We received information regarding the parks and field signage project and those plans. We listened to a presentation of a revised draft and information for the Brick Street policy and made some decisions there. And we had one brief update related to the Historic Preservation Board from Commissioner Ranny. Prior to that meeting, the commission met in an executive session to receive legal advice from the solicitor on a variety of topics. The next regular meeting of the commission will be held on Tuesday, September 12th, and that meeting will begin at 8 p.m. in this room. Here are the ways the public can participate in person. You don't need to pre-register, simply show up at the appropriate meeting time or remotely via the Zoom webinar format. Again, you don't need to pre-register, simply click the link located on the meeting agenda on the municipal website. If you wish to speak during the citizens' comments or during public hearings, simply use the raise hand feature on Zoom and you'll be notified when it is your turn to speak. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next, community highlights. Commissioner Vice President Swager Wilson, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you have a law enforcement question on your mind? The Mount Lebanon Police Department's Coffee with a Cop program is coming back in cooperation with the Community Relations Board. Stop in at Orbis Cafe, 675 Washington Road between 8 and 10 a.m. Thursday, September 14th, and chat with an officer. The topic of conversation is completely up to you. The Mount Lebanon Public Information Office is looking for fall interns. College juniors or seniors in journalism, communications, or public relations majors can apply for the internship, which is unpaid, but offers the opportunity to write stories for Mount Lebanon Magazine and get a better understanding of how local government communications work. Details at mountlebanon.org/human resources. I just want to remind everybody that fall's coming quickly, which I think all of you know, because back to school next week. There's a chrysanthemum sale at the Mount Lebanon Library, and the last day for pre-sale is Friday. You can do it online, or you can stop down in the bookseller to buy your chrysanthemum. That's where I got mine last year, and they're fabulous, and they support the library. So think about buying your chrysanthemums. And finally, a reminder that the municipality will pick up woody waste at your curb on Saturday, September 7th. You need to make a reservation by August 31st by calling 412-343-3403 or going to mylebo.mountlebanon.org. Place the materials curbside before 7 a.m. on the day of pickup. A list of rules and requirements is on our website. If you miss that pickup, you can always drop off your yard waste at the golf course maintenance facility on Pine Avenue on the first Saturday of the month from 7 to 3 through October. They'll collect leaves, garden residue in recyclable paper bags, as well as small twigs, shrubs, brush, branches smaller than 3 feet. No grass, stones, soil, stumps, large limbs, or plastic bags.
Very much. All right, next, citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for any resident to express an opinion on any topic pertaining to local government. The commission enjoys hearing from the public on various issues and learning about items to address in the future. If you have specific questions, we will try and answer them at the end of your comments. If we can't, we commit to getting you the answers as soon as possible. When I call your name, please come to the podium to address the commission. Please state your name and address for the record. In fairness, we ask each speaker to share their thoughts for 5 minutes maximum. The community is as good as each person in this room. We work together to make this a community that we can all be proud of, and we hope that the dialogue remains respectful. We also appreciate the audience's efforts to refrain from any behavior that is disruptive or might intimidate free speech. First on the list, Colonel Hoon.
Bill Henry, 456 Coolidge Avenue. We had a party recently to celebrate the completion of our modernization project, and it seems to be a little premature. If you look right out at the front of the building, looks like we need more work. Any idea when that might be done or?
It's still ongoing.
Ongoing, okay. All right, well, I was looking at this and some other people have looked at it and said, you know what, it really doesn't fit with the building structure along the street itself. The sidewalks are an Art Deco modern pattern, construct, whatever you want to call it. And what we have with all the buildings is brick and mortar traditional. So it's, you know, it's not glaring. It's not like you put a lot of color in the sidewalks like you might find in New York City, for instance, somewhere else where they've got more art for the people, but it's there. Now, during the construction, we had all kinds of barriers all over the place. People were bumping into these things. They were falling down, injuries. I myself ended up bleeding out front here. And I just wonder if anybody has any idea how many people were injured in the course of this project. Anything?
I'm looking at our solicitor, and I don't think of anything. We don't have a list.
Well, give you for instance, I've lived here a while and myself and a lot of other people who have lived here for a while have learned that you don't cross the roads around here with the light. If you do, there'll be a vehicle coming up and turning into you or coming around the corner and turning into you. So the only way to get across this road safely is to wait until nothing coming that way, nothing coming this way, and hustle across the street, checking both ways as you go. I don't know anybody that's ever been hit by a car that follows that procedure. Whereas I know a number of people who have stepped off the curb when they get that pictogram and says, safe to go ahead, step into the street. And boom, somebody blasts right past. I mean, it's awfully dangerous area. Yeah, the one night I was trying to get across the road, and this was early in the game when they first started putting these barriers up. Looked left, looked right, clear, went across the road, and whoa. I'm not going to make the sidewalk unless my name is Carl Lewis and I'm in an Olympic long jump competition. Not going to happen. So, light just turned. I was safe when I started across, not safe now. I'm not getting over. So I turned, started walking down the street, and I hoped nobody would hit me. Nobody did. Made it through that day. But I'm not the only one that had that particular experience, by the way. Other people have told me, yeah, real problem. I also noticed on the way up, lantern flies on the sidewalk. Now, you might not know what those are, but they're a so-called invasive species from the Far East, came over on shipping. And right now in the area, they're busy mating, and then they die. Well, there are a lot of them around here right now. Also made me think, the most invasive species of all time is us. You ever think of that? I mean, our Parks Advisory Group wanted to make a big deal about deer, and they defecate and leave seeds and invasive species and all that. It's us, folks,
Thank you for the thought, Colonel.
not deer. Thank you.
Next, you're welcome. Next on the list, Sally Lamond.
Sally Lamont, 205 Mohawk Drive. I'm here on behalf of my sister who purchased a home on Old Gilkison Road. She's moving up from Florida. Cannot be here tonight. Was too afraid of you guys to be on Zoom. We submitted our comments in writing some weeks ago. And I just want to say we submitted other concerns, including some of these, to the planning committee. And when we appeared before them, they were mute on every point. And so I would like to get some feedback. Despite what this gentleman told me at the planning commission, that this was going to be a driveway to direct people to drive up Old Gilkison Road, it's really a street you're creating. I was the controller of the Turner Construction Real Estate Development Company, and I know a driveway from a street. You're taking a very quiet street that has very little traffic and is completely safe for walkers and the people that live in the Timber Creek. And I go to that street all the time. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic and wildlife, and you're creating a thoroughfare to an intersection where the left turn is already extremely dangerous. And I don't know if any of you have ever been out to the place and looked, but if you talk to the people that live there, it's very dangerous to turn left onto Gilkison Road, where this group is directing the traffic from all these townhouses. I would like you to address that. We put this in our comments to the planning board and to you. And also, we're not trying to stop the development. Like I said, I was a controller of a real estate development, but it has to make sense. And there's no reason they couldn't just turn right and go up Cedar like we do, because it's not safe to turn left where they're proposing everybody turn left. Also, it came out in that planning meeting that they were planning to plant pin oak trees. And I know that that was, one of the guys here said, that guy said that was on the approved list. Well, it might be on the approved list for Mount Lebanon in certain areas, but this is a slope. They're not appropriate for a slope. They're supposed to be 30 feet from the street. And again, if you would go and look at this property, it's a straight drop from Old Gilkison down to where these are going to be and where they're going to plant the trees. They're a very fast growing tree. They're a magnet for what used to be called gypsy moss. They're now called spongy moss, which will destroy all the foliage, not just pin oak trees. They're a dirty tree. We had them in Florida. And so we object to the pin oaks as well. And usually when a development happens, there's some benefit to the existing residents. And we don't see any benefit to the existing residents other than somebody said, oh, this will make your property more valuable. I don't think it makes the property more valuable to turn a quiet street into a very busy trafficked and a street. I don't know, again, if you've ever seen it, but it's a very narrow street and it's a very quiet street. So I would like to hear what you guys thought of our comments.
We're going to get a presentation from the developer as part of the presentation night. That's item 5 on the agenda. So I think I've sat in planning board, so I've heard the
Right.
discussion, but
Right.
for the rest of commission, they're not aware of the project. They will see the presentation, and I'm sure they'll keep your comments in mind as the group makes their presentation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see, that's everybody in the room. Is there anybody online that wants to comment?
Yes, I have one online now. Oh, wait. Yes, they just put their hand back up. Hold on.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, can you guys hear us?
Yes,
Hi, Steve. It's Tyler Love and Laura Love at 361 Old Gilkison that directly borders the said development. Is there any way that we can make our comments after the presentation?
let me ask the solicitor. How does this work?
It would be more effective, I
All
believe.
right, the solicitor said that, yes, you may make your comments after the presentation.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Steve. We'll hang on.
All right, great, thank you. Anybody else online?
That was the last one.
Let's make a note to come back to Tyler Love, a little later on in the meeting here. All right, so for now, that concludes citizens' comments. Next on the agenda, item 3, Commissioner Flynn, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regarding the minutes from the regular meeting held August 8th, 2023, I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? There are none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Item 4, Commissioner Rainey, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Consideration of sidewalk expansion policy revisions. In August 2013, the commission adopted a sidewalk expansion policy. The Environmental Sustainability Board and municipal staff have recommended amendments to the current policy to make it easier for residents to request sidewalk installations in their neighborhoods. The commission reviewed the policy changes in their discussion session on June 13th and on August 8th. I move to adopt the revised sidewalk expansion policy.
Second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, the motion passes 4-1. Thank you. All right, item 5, Commissioner Grella, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request for final approval of a subdivision and land development plan for the Black Oak Hill project on Old Gilkison Road. I have no idea how to pronounce that, but a group owns the property located at 397 Old Gilkison Road is requesting to subdivide the 2.7 acre lot into 12 parcels. This would accommodate the Black Oak Hill land development plan submitted by that group to construct 10 single-family homes attached on the property. 2 of the 3 existing structures of the property would be raised, 10 single-family homes would each have their own lot. One lot would contain the remaining existing structure, and the final lot would be open space on the opposite side of Old Gilkison Road. The property is located in the R3 zoning district. Single-family attached dwellings are a use by right in the R3 zoning district. The planning board recommended final approval of the subdivision and land development plans at its July 18th, 2023 meeting. Tonight, the commission will hear a presentation on the project from the project developer. The commission will take separate actions on final approvals of the subdivision plan, requested modifications, and the land development plan at the September 12th, 2023 meeting.
Thank you. It is time for a presentation of the Black Oak Hill. You're gonna have to say, how is this word pronounced? Well, when you get to the microphone, you can say it so everybody else can hear. So come on up and please make your presentation.
Good evening. My name is Chris Peters. I'm with MDM Surveyors and Engineers on behalf of the applicant, DeSiga USA. Here to present to you the Black Oak Hill development proposed for 397 Old Gilkison Road. With me this evening is Matt Dearson with Midland Architecture. He's the architect of record for the project.
Actually, right there was, I could see that was on the screen, so. Okay, all right. Let me know, Sandy, if the audience can see that.
Do we have a digital copy of this? Do we have a digital copy?
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. And we're also given hard copy of it. I assume there's a digital copy that went out as well.
You do have hard copies. I did not
Yes.
have a digital copy this evening. We did provide digital copies to the municipality, but
Can you send those? Thanks.
Great, okay, thank you. All right, so we can see the display there. Great, thank you, Sam. That way the audience can see what you're describing.
Very good. So the plans that you have hard copies of is the final land development set for Black Oak Hill. It's 10 single-family attached homes. The property in question, 397 Old Gilkison Road, currently has 2 residents and a garage on it. And the intent is to take down the old garage, take down one of the old homes, and keep the existing home on site. That existing property is served by a Governor's Drive off of Gilkison Road and also has a driveway onto Old Gilkison Road. The proposed subdivision would break that property down into those 10 single-family attached units with their own lots and have a lot made for the existing home to remain. Now that property, you can see, does have frontage on Old Gilkison Road and is actually bisected by that newer Gilkison Road that they put in the 60s with a residual unbuildable piece that remains down along the stream that's cut off from the rest of the property by Gilkison.
Oh, interesting.
So
Just for commission's benefit to you, right there, just to point out where Mr. Love lives, because he's gonna be commenting later, is right there.
right here.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Love's home is right here. So the proposed work will include from a traffic standpoint, these 10 units plus that existing unit house to remain would have service from Gilkison Road as a right-in access to serve this common driveway serving these the garages that are on this Gilkison Road side of the property. There is a right out egress onto Gilkison Road so that they can make that turn towards Cedar Boulevard, go to the school, and go to the park.
And it's right only.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
It is right only. And then the existing driveway that serves that home to remain, we'd like to widen that so that it has room for two-way traffic so that people can come into and out of this development onto Old Gilkison.
Can you point out exactly where that driveway is so that the people at home can see it? The one that you're widening?
That would be this driveway,
Okay.
just to the plan left of the existing structure. So the existing home to remain with its driveway. And in the proposed condition, that existing home to remain with that widened driveway to provide better access for the folks here. When I say better access in terms of accessibility, that existing driveway is quite steep, so we would look to soften that grade and make it easier for folks here to get out onto Old Gilkison if they choose to go that way. And that would be our expected path for them to take if they wanted to head towards the shopping, that they would go out onto Old Gilkison and make the left onto Gilkison Road farther out.
Can you show me how to do that? If I was going to leave to go to the Galleria, you're saying, right?
Would be out here onto Old Gilkison to make that
Okay.
right turn. No, from what I understand from the residents here, it's actually easier
To walk.
to walk or to actually might be easier to make the right turn on Gilkison and wrap around and up over the top to get to the mall or to Whole Foods or.
Right.
Yeah, but this is 10 new units from, and I'm not a traffic engineer, but with respect to traffic, because I know that is important here. It's at the peak hour, an additional 62 trips. That's 31 cars in and out for this area from these developments at the peak hour. And that would be folks going out to go shopping, folks going to the school or to the park. And I would expect over time, most folks would find this right turn in is probably the most convenient way to get back home.
That number, that traffic number you gave, that could be any of the routes out.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
split across the three different, points.
Okay, thank you.
And those are all things that we did discuss with Mike Haberman with Gateway at the beginning of this. We did have extensive conversations with the municipal traffic engineer, and he was a participant with us when we brought this project to PennDOT to scope it out at the beginning. And at that time, it was determined that because we were not adding many trips with respect to potential
Right.
traffic generated, that no additional traffic-related work was required by ordinance. Where I think, I believe 100 new trips would have put us to the threshold where some additional look at traffic was warranted. So from an ordinance standpoint, I believe we are well under the requirements to do more than we have done with both the municipal engineer as well as PennDOT. We do need PennDOT approval for these, this right in, right out, as well as the additional sidewalk that we're providing along Gilkison Road. That's going to go through, it's going to go from end to end. It's going to go from the existing sidewalk at Cedar all the way to the end of the property line up here just behind Mr. Love's property.
All right, and then it'll end, the sidewalk will end.
Yes,
right?
yeah,
Okay,
right at the
there
edge
is
of
a
the property.
sidewalk that services those, the new build, and then they can walk out to Cedar.
Yes.
Before you go,
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure I'm understanding how that intersection of the the sidewalks with the right in. How is that? Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine how that's gonna work because it's not a driveway per se.
It's a 12-foot wide drive lane.
It's a driveway.
So folks coming down Gilkison Road that are going to make that right turn in are going to have a pretty easy angle to make that right turn in.
But so from a pedestrian perspective, I'm trying to just understand from a pedestrian's perspective, and I recognize that the sidewalk's gonna end there, but someday, right, maybe there's a active walking path there that people are using. What are they experiencing as they're walking? Because that sounds like a smooth angle in for a car.
Yes, sir.
Seems kind of dangerous from a pedestrian perspective.
Would be a 24-foot throat functional for the pedestrian, which is the width of a street.
I'm just trying, I can't
It is
conceptualize.
dangerous. Well, it's, it depends on how fast the cars are going off Gilkison. But the sidewalk doesn't go anywhere. So I
They're
don't
not going
think
down.
it's
Right
not,
now.
yeah, but I mean, if you look at the topography there, I mean, we've talked about a sidewalk there. The
It's too steep.
it's too steep. Yeah, the barrier, and then it just drops off. I mean, there's not a real clear way. You'd almost need to put the walking path through the Timber Creek apartment property and then back through there to get in. It's just, I don't know. I think you have to put the sidewalk in due to our ordinance, but I don't.
Well, so, but
No.
again, just my question there then is if we have a sidewalk going all that way, and this just seems like a dangerous dynamic between that, ingress for cars and a designed sidewalk.
Pedestrian coming through here would experience a 24-foot piece of concrete, roughly the length of your DS here.
Right, but designed,
Sight lines
Designed
are
right in
good.
for the,
Yeah.
for people to live here.
Yeah.
right,
Sight
And
lines.
the expected trips through this
Yeah.
particular driveway are 31 cars a day. It's
Right.
31 people coming in here a day is
Yeah.
the expected number. It's a
If I
pretty big
recall,
gap between, for a pedestrian to experience if they were.
And if I recall, the current sidewalk stops basically at Cedar Boulevard, so the idea is this is supposed to link up to the Cedar Boulevard sidewalk.
Yes, sir. Doesn't connect. That sidewalk at the end of Cedar might be 3 feet wide. We're coming in here with a 6-foot wide sidewalk here along the curb to give people a little bit more room from
Yeah.
that busy curb line. And then we're pulling the sidewalk away from the curb and providing that PennDOT sidewalk across the entire frontage. So I expect if no further connections are made here, this would be functionally a sidewalk to nowhere, but I do understand people do work their way down along here to get to the bus stop, so we'll provide some value to people that are currently not maybe in a great spot.
So will there be a sidewalk in Old Gilkison?
As
Oh.
the gentlewoman spoke to before, it's a rather steep drop off the edge of the road here. It's prohibitive, from a sidewalk installation
Okay.
standpoint. We did look at that at the beginning, and it's just, that's a lot to do, to jam in there.
So the only buffer is, I'm sorry,
Oh, yes.
I was trying to listen, but you're saying that the way you're buffering it is you've widened that sidewalk. You didn't actually add like a tree lawn or buffer between the sidewalk and Gilkison, right?
No landscaping per se. We do have grass in there.
Okay, so
there will
there
be
is
grass
somewhat of
between
a
the-
little bit barrier. It's pretty hard to do on a busy road. I was just trying to get my head around it.
Yeah,
That's
if
all.
If you're walking down here, you're gonna have the street and the curb line, maybe about 5 feet of grass.
Yeah.
And then that sidewalk.
Yeah,
width
it's,
area.
I mean,
It's the best we can do with.
yeah, it's the conditions on busy roads. Got it.
We, that's. an
PennDOT made you do that?
Uh, We did actually have that sidewalk, closer to the edge of the right of way.
That's okay.
And when we had our, pre-application meeting with them, they did ask or somebody suggested that we, bring that closer to the curb because, I mean,
Sorry. Got it. Thank you.
I would like to also add, as we work our way around the site, in addition to that sidewalk and in reference to the comments earlier, the trees that we are providing along the street,
Okay.
along Old Gilkison Road, they are now sugar maples.
Oh,
So those plants that you have in front of you, those are not pin oaks, those are sugar maples. We're providing on that slope along Old Gilkison Road.
okay.
Do you have any deer protection for those trees? Because they love sugar maples and pin oaks. They'll be eaten.
I could
Yeah,
hope that
but-
steep slope does it, but,
Not
Good
with our
luck.
deer.
But you know, you can try.
Our deer have mountain boots. Forget it.
Oh, yeah.
that is the crux of the presentation, though unless you have any questions. about
Where else can they, go ahead.
Modifications, yes.
Can,
We do have a handful of modifications. One of them specifically.
Can you go through all the modifications and which
Yes, sir.
modifications you're seeking, whether it's a zoning or a saldo?
Saldo,
Hmm.
yes, and the first modification was from section 805.9 regarding sidewalks along Old Gilkison Road, because again, that is a very steep drop off there.
okay.
And there's not much right of way. The property, the back of curb is within feet of or immediately against the edge of the property line there. So there we have two constraints, the right of way and that steep slope.
Okay.
The other modification was for the shade trees along the frontage. Again, because of that steep slope and because of how close the street is to the property, there's not a lot of right of way in there. So we do have several trees that are within the individual lots themselves that the private, either the association or the private owners of these units need to maintain. And those are noted on that landscape plan as well. We did a pretty good back and forth with municipal engineer to make sure that it was documented exactly how those things were to be handled. That the trees within the property, they're close to the street to provide shade, to meet the intent of the ordinance. It will be privately maintained. And where we did have room to put those trees against the street frontage within the right of way, we did that as well. We put those extra trees down here between the end units and that last residential to remain.
So the saldo waiver that you're seeking for the sidewalks, tell me which one that is again? The proximity to the sidewalk?
The modification is from 805.9 with respect to the sidewalks along the frontage along Old Gilkison Road. But we are providing sidewalk along Gilkison Road. Actually, more sidewalk along. Gilkison.
Oh, you're saying because it's steep, you can't
Because
do a
it's- yes, sir.
sidewalk.
Yes, sir.
Right.
You
Because
could
it's
level
steep.
that.
We could, but the right of way isn't terribly wide there. Again, it's right against the back of curb.
You could build a wall on the back end of that property, right?
You could build a wall.
So it's just a financial decision is what you're saying.
I would use the term impracticable. But yes,
I wouldn't use the term practical because practically you could do it. You're not doing it because it's a financial decision, because it would cost too much money to build a wall to follow the saldo.
our discussions with municipal staff and with PennDOT, the value for the community was actually to extend this one along the length of Gilkison Road.
I'm talking, I thought you were talking about the
Yes.
top side of the property.
Yes. Yes, sir. The modification request is that we're not putting it here, but in place of that, we are providing it down here through PennDOT. So we're trying to address the intent of the ordinance by providing that extra sidewalk. It's just, it's physically very challenging up here to install that.
That was the first. What was the other saldo you mentioned?
Well,
Waiver request?
The sidewalk and the location of the street trees, because we do
Right.
have some of those street trees within private property, again, trying to satisfy the intent of the ordinance and make sure they're maintained.
Right.
But we can't satisfy the full
Yeah.
letter.
Can the architect address the materials that are going to be used on the townhomes, please?
I can do that. I was told I was somewhat off the hook tonight, so I don't have a ton with me, but we did present architectural material to the planning board at the last hearing. The material palette is definitely within the idea, sorry, I'm collecting my thoughts, is within the proscribed materials within the zoning code. We conformed to I'm not gonna remember the section number off the top of my head, I think it's 707, for demonstrating our sympathy to the adjacent properties, although the adjacent properties on Old Gilkison are pretty disparate, they're kind of all over the
Right.
place.
They are.
But the materials are fiber cement siding in a couple of different configurations, some masonry veneer across the ground floor level on Gilkison Road, where essentially it's counterintuitive, but the frontage is Old Gilkison, the address is Old Gilkison, but effectively cars and people will more than likely arrive from Gilkison, which actually worked well with the zoning code because the zoning code really only envisions parking and garages at the rear of properties within the township. And so that area will be what are back doors that function as front doors, mailboxes, et cetera. And that'll be a masonry veneer. And then there are a couple of contrasting projecting bays. And in order to satisfy the zoning requirement for the variation of the facade, the actual standard plans, of which there are 3, they actually step at various points inward away from Gilkison towards the center. It's subtle, but it makes for variation in the facades. I do have some.
I've seen the renderings.
Okay.
I've
okay.
already looked at them. I just was curious.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Where can the residents walk or how could they get to the Galleria?
To walk to the gallery?
Yeah, is it possible?
No,
Okay,
no. Well, I mean, possible, not recommended.
no.
Stepping on school, there's a question that was brought up during the presentation, of the planning board, where some residents asked about, hey, we'd like to be able to walk down Old Gilkison to get to the steps to go up Dinglewood.
Oh,
That's such a project commission may have heard about from me once or twice.
where are the steps get to the Galleria?
That,
No, they
won't
get you
to the
to
Galleria, but they would at least link Old Gilkison up to Dinglewood, and so they were asking for that, when the residents were at, the last training. Point of information. You have more to present?
No, sir.
No,
Just to
that's
answer
good.
your question.
All right,
Yeah.
do we have more questions?
This is the first I'm seeing the plans. I haven't looked at them yet. I'll have questions for Ian about the planning commission and some of the issues that may have been raised at the planning commission, because I obviously haven't had any conversations with them about this the first time I'm seeing it, so I'll have some questions about some of the.
All right, why don't we do this? We have a resident that wanted to comment, maybe after the end of his comments. Commissioner Grella, maybe the question will pop in your head. So Nope, okay. All right. Mr. Love, are you online there?
I am. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yes.
Alrighty, I appreciate it. Commission, thank you for taking the time tonight. My wife and I are here, so we'd like to make some comments here in regards to the development. As you can see, our house is cut off of the plans there, but you can see on the right-hand side of the drawings, they went all the way to a 5-foot setback off of our land, which we only own 5 feet off of our land. So they are a total of 10 feet from our property physically. And the other side has 35 feet to the existing dwelling. And I understand that they kept that obviously, so we could, I kind of position those lots the way they could by keeping that existing dwelling. It just seems like an unfair, I mean, I've appraised real estate for over 10 years. I was never against this development in any way, shape, or form. We bought that property 8 years ago, understanding that something could happen. I never in my wildest dreams expected it to be 10 feet from my property. The front deck is legit. And again, the deck is on the front of these properties proper to their address, is going to be looking directly in our front door. I just think on a practical level, that is unrealistic. Furthermore, that is unrealistic is they own a sliver of land behind our house that was developed when they subdivided the property originally from the original farmhouse. Our house and the house across the street were the daughters' dwellings, and they wanted access to the creek that comes behind our house that is maintained by the borough. So that sliver is now being used as a pseudo driveway for 31 cars a day. That is, hold on, that is 12 feet away from our house. If you guys could pull up the other drawing that shows the driveway coming behind our house, not just the plot plan. Keep going.
I don't really think.
There you
that's
go.
a
So
curb cut.
that curb cut coming off of Gilkison Road. I don't know if anybody has ever driven it. I'm sure you guys all have. There is a fully developed forest right before that. And that driveway is coming 6 feet from my fence, our fence, that our 6-year-old plays at. Again, I'm not against this development. I'm against how it was designed, how it is going to be coming in. That is a lot of cars to be coming off of a very, very busy roadway. I have attempted to make that turn, in theory, over the last couple of weeks. And people don't have muscle memory to make that turn or stop that fast. Especially if somebody has a couple pops and cuts that corner, they're coming right through our fence. All I ask is that we consider maybe cutting off that end unit or sliding that setback to make it fair for both sides of that dwelling. I know that the plans of that, obviously, of that existing dwelling are to flip it and make it into a colossal mansion on the corner of Gilkison and Cedar Road. But why don't we slip it down a little bit and have some compassion for the existing residents of Mount Lebanon and the safety of children that are playing in their backyards that never envisioned this. In that sidewalk, we already have people that walk down through that lot, get to that forest behind our house, and cannot get, obviously, down Gilkison Road, so they come through our yard and walk up our driveway.
That's just gonna drive more pedestrian.
Yeah, it's going to drive more pedestrian traffic behind our house, through our yard, to a dead end where my child plays. We have a dog that's in our yard, and up through our house because they have nowhere else to go. I'm not anti-development. I am anti how it was done. We do not need to get this greedy and utilize the land to its absolute furthest extent. It is just not necessary. And they claim that, again, it's going to raise your property value. No, it is not. If there's one 20 feet from me and a nice buffer of some trees, and again, maybe a privacy fence on our side or something like that, that they would put in, or I will put in if we can get a variance for that, I am fine with that. It's just the fact that when it's 10 feet away, it's a problem and is not going to raise my property value. And again, the traffic I agree with, coming off of Gilkison Road, we live on a blind curve. I ask all of you on this commission to please drive down our street. Take a look at where our driveway comes. It's a sharp bend to the left. It's blind. We don't walk our dog on our street because cars that actually live there could run us over. Come on over, have a beer. We'll sit behind the house and watch the traffic drive by. When they gave in the last presentation, cars don't go over 45 on Gilkison.
45 is a minimum.
I go 45 on Gilkison and I live there. It's asinine. I'm sorry. It is absolutely asinine. And I appreciate your time. And again, come on over for a beer. I'll have a cooler ready.
All right, thank you.
Laura,
Mr.
would you like that in?
Nope, I think you said it all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Love. We appreciate your comments. All right, are there any other comments, questions by commission?
Just for Ian.
Okay, so
Again, I had, how many bedrooms are the units?
So on the second floor, the level on Gilkison is a basement and garage with sort of a bonus room. There's a living level that's open on the ground level to the rear towards the front, Old Gilkison. There are 3 bedrooms on the floor above that. And then below the gable of the roof, there's essentially like a bonus space that they're going to develop more or less speculatively. And as they sell, they can be finished out as an additional bedroom. So as many as 4 bedrooms.
Yeah, 3 to 4, and kitchen is on which floor?
Is on the level of the rear, the yard on Old Gilkison. I've got to stop saying that.
That's
The
okay.
front yard.
Front
on
yard,
Gilkison. But I mean, that's the crazy thing. Even if there were a sidewalk on Gilkison, on Old Gilkison, it would be 16 feet above the front
That's
yards.
the grade.
Yeah, it's not negotiable.
Great. So it's 3 stories then, it sounds like?
Yes,
It's, 2.5 is what the county will probably call it, but
Oh,
3,
yeah.
yeah.
I guess it depends if you're on one side, it's 3 stories, if the other side it's 2.
No, they dictate what the first story above grade is, and that will be the level with the yard on Old Gilkison. The story
Okay.
below will be a basement legally and for purposes of building code. So, yeah, sure. And I wanted to just, as a comment, the size of the setback against Mr. Love's property, which is the same as Mr. Love's setback, and I understand is a big difference from not having anything in the grass area. We could not move the row away from his house without seeking a variance for the yard setback that we would create at the existing house. So that's so tightly managed between what the code dictates for the one small setback and the one larger setback, that diagonal we're creating when we subdivide between the existing house that we wanted to maintain. I mean, it's not gonna be a mansion. It's a 3-bedroom house. It's gonna be a 3-bedroom house, but it's a historic structure that is worth saving. But in order to thread that needle, that's how tight it ended up being. So that's kind of the genesis of the site.
Any other questions?
Again, just for Ian, I had a couple questions, related to the comments that came up in planning commission.
For the microphone?
Yeah, that'd be great.
With any specific questions or just generally?
I'm just trying to understand what they were. What were some of from the genesis of the project to, like, one, for example, is just the roadway that's being created, in what looks like the rear yard here.
Turn off and go.
The sort of interior
Yeah,
driveway
right.
services.
Yeah.
So you have these access driveways, the, pull-ins to the garages, and then the egress driveway onto Old Gilkison to connect, and then the other egress driveway out onto Gilkison. Mostly the planning board was fine with, the egress onto Old Gilkison. They felt that made sense. Their comments about the Gilkison Road, ingress, right in, right outs, we're basically deferring to PennDOT, saying that, if PennDOT had comments, obviously our Saldo requires that if there's changes to traffic flow, they have to come back to the planning board. But the planning board was pretty much said, if PennDOT's fine with it, we're fine with it. So I know they're under review with PennDOT on those ones. The planning board and the developer did go back and forth a little bit on this sideway connection, but I think we came to a good resolution on having the connection, here, having it actually connect to the existing sidewalk that runs up and around Cedar, to give these residents here access to the sidewalk, which then goes up Cedar, which connects to Rob Hollow Park, Bird Park, further up to Main Park. So, when we were thinking about sidewalks at the planning board, it was really this sidewalk to connect to the existing one to get them up Cedar, to those assets.
What were I'm just curious, the conversations about just adding that much impervious area on the lots? I would assume that, and again, I haven't looked at this at all, so I have no idea that it meets code or doesn't. I'm assuming it does the way it's outlined, but
Yeah.
We'll look at it in more detail, but we have a certain percentage of the yard that can be used for impervious area. Just from what I'm looking at, it looks like a huge impervious area for each of these lots.
In the rear of the lots it is. So this lot is a through lot because it has frontage on two public
Sure.
streets. And by code, the developer is allowed to define which is their front yard and which is their rear yard. So we have code about impervious area in the front yard and total lot coverage.
Right.
So since they defined their front yard as the old Gilkison Road side,
Mhm.
this is largely grass, sloped hillside, trees,
Mhm.
coverage area. So they really don't have any impervious area in the front yard of these lots.
Hmm.
All the impervious is in the rear yards with the driveway access.
Right.
So on the front yard coverage, they're fine. And then on the total surface area, they're fine too. They ran those
Okay, got it.
calculations.
Thanks.
Ian,
Yes.
to address Mr. Love's concerns, is there any possibility to pull that ingress from Gilkison Road down closer to Cedar Boulevard? It's not as convenient, I get it. but
yeah,
You could
so-
pull it in a little bit further.
I am neither a traffic engineer nor do I represent the developer.
Right.
So I, from a planning standpoint, could they do it? Possibly, but like, would it be, I guess I'll say it this way, would it be legal by code? Yes, it would be legal by code to slide it down. But I don't know what they need. Like I said, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't
Sure.
know what they need
Yeah.
from a turning radius standpoint or
Right.
from, some
Yeah.
of those other ingress things. So I'll defer to the engineering experts on that one. As to the feasibility question, it's legal by code, but, I can't speak to the feasibility of it. And the 5-foot setback is the minimum in the code. The code's written a minimum of 5 feet. So they're at the 5-foot minimum side yard setback. So they're
Yeah, they're okay on that.
within the code there.
I'm just curious, what was the conversation related to where we've had single building attached homes, we've had individual driveways? What was the conversation against creating individual driveways? Was that not feasible?
So since the driveways are coming off of Gilkison Road is a state road. That would be an HOP permit issue with PennDOT. I'll say from my experience with PennDOT, once again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but from my experience with PennDOT, typically, PennDOT does not like to grant more curb cuts than what's currently existing.
Sure.
And the current property has an ingress egress loop in it. So they're keeping the same 2 curb cuts. They're just moving where they are.
Got it.
So that's, to my experience with PennDOT, that's typically how PennDOT operates is they don't want more curb cuts into their state roads. So that's kind of what led to, I think, this.
Okay.
layout.
So then the driveways off of Old Gilkison Road just become. Yeah,
Yeah, this one. There's an existing driveway here. They're just wide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but is that only gonna be one way?
No.
No,
it'll be
it's
two-
two-way. That's why they're widening.
Individual driveways off Old Gilkison Road,
No,
not needed.
No.
That's what we're saying.
too steep, too. Too steep.
So is there any? I think the developer mentioned there's grass between the Gilkison and.
The
Sidewalk.
sidewalk, yes.
Yeah.
Looks like here, let's see, looks like it's 6 feet of grass. It looks like between the curb of Gilkison Road and the sidewalk.
And then how big is that driveway? I guess I'm just getting to Commissioner Grill's point, but there's a lot of impervious surface there. And that's the south facing side of this property.
Yes.
Which is heavy sun, and I'm like, okay, it's nice that there are trees on the north side, but also on it'd be logical that you would want trees on that side also ultimately to shade those properties. Whether it's feasible or not, I'm not the qualified person, but, and then there's the runoff issues, right? We're right where all this flow is happening.
There's stormwater management on site that they're doing.
Just see here.
Yeah. I'll let you talk about that.
With respect to impervious area and stormwater management, we are putting an infiltration system in under that common drive, actually running the whole length of the property. So we are net reducing the volume of water that's coming off the property, even when you take into account we have the driveways out here and we have that sidewalk. There is a net reduction in the volume and rate of runoff from the site because we are sumping so much of that water.
So with that stormwater management underneath what is essentially another private road, does that then get maintained? Is the idea of that to be maintained by the
HOA.
owners themselves, whatever you're creating HOA?
Yeah,
Here's the lines for right, these are the
Yes.
storm lines underneath here.
Yeah, we do have a system of a 12 or 15-inch pipe in gravel, wrapped in fabric that is intended to infiltrate quite a bit of the excess runoff.
And was there, I was trying to find your landscaping plans.
What?
Was there, okay, was there, these are trees here at the rear too, aren't there? There's a couple trees. here,
There
right?
are some, yeah, it's we do have a couple of bigger trees down there that we'd like to keep. Okay, those existing, where we can. We're not gonna cut through the root system.
And then, I just had a thought and I lost it.
Since you asked about planning board discussions too, the planning board did talk about the trees at the top, which I know they had a modification request for. And the planning board's preference was because the right of way, where the right of way was drawn when Old Gilkison Road was put in, the right of way really is like the front of the property line, that there's not space between the cartway and the property line, like the property line literally is the cartway line there. So because those trees are gonna be located on private property, the planning board's preference and our preference as municipal staff is to have those trees be maintained by the private property owners, even though they are at the spot where the ordinance says a street tree should be, but based on setbacks from the roadway and all that stuff, they are outside the right of way. So our preference and the planning board preference was to have those be the responsibility of the private property owners, which was why they have that modification request.
So is there any ongoing maintenance requirement? In other words, let's say I move into one of those units and chop down the tree because I don't like trees. Do I have to put it back?
I'll defer to the solicitor on that since it is a private tree.
Not unless the homeowners.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There are two trees.
Dan oversee these, someone nodding his head.
So I would expect, because I do believe you are going to have an opportunity to review those documents.
Homeowner documents,
Association.
yes.
I would expect as part of the developer's agreement that would be negotiated.
Perfect.
Our intent was to have those trees there to meet municipal ordinance requirements, and we did designate them to be maintained by the private entity here,
Okay.
either the HOA or those individual lot owners. That's, I think, a negotiation
All right.
after approval.
So
And what's-
these
is it-
two trees are municipal street trees, I will say, because of how the right of way.
We have room.
Yeah.
They have room there between how the cartway curves and the right of way angles. So these two are municipal trees. The rest of these are the private trees.
Is there any possibility of pervious pavers in the back?
I know. No, and I would offer, the size of the sump that we are offering on that stormwater management plan
Yeah, it's huge.
would function, maybe more effectively than
Than the
the
pervious.
pavers. It's, we don't have the stone turned on here, but this whole
Yeah.
strip here it's 3 or 4
I
feet of
looked at it.
stone underneath there, yeah.
Yeah, I looked at it. Thanks.
Good. Any other questions? All right, thank
Thank
you
you.
for that presentation. Let's see, next on the agenda, item 6, Commissioner Squager Wilson, please.
No, no, sorry. Side conversation. Thank you, Mr. President. Consideration to award a change order to the existing street reconstruction contract. The commission approved the expenditure of $64,700 to replace deteriorated sidewalks at the municipal library during the discussion session on July 11th, 2023. Approval is requested to have Nanando Construction complete the work under the existing street reconstruction contract. The cost of the work will not exceed $64,700. I move to approve a change order to the current street reconstruction contract held by Nanando Construction, authorizing the replacement of deteriorated sidewalks at the municipal library at a cost not to exceed $64,700.
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Item 7, Commissioner Flynn, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. In consideration of the expenditure list for July totaling $7,887,346.28. I move to approve the expenditure list for July totaling $7,887,000, $346.28.
Second.
Say that with the usual zest. Sorry.
It's getting late.
Yeah,
Done.
lame.
Just don't have it tonight. All right, fair enough. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Item 8, Commissioner
Thank you,
Raines, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that the reports be received and filed.
And they shall be, and we are adjourned.
Right. Did it. That's not a record meeting, but good stuff.
No, Gilbertson is too, isn't it? Isn't that Steve's? I think it's Steve's. No, it's not mine. Yeah.
Oh,
It's a
love
good
it. You
project.
should
I get
speak
more
up.
done.